In this video, we're going to introduce you to arrays and their usage in Scala. Arrays are a basic collection that exists in most programming languages, and collections in general are a way for you to store multiple values inside of a single variable. Up until now, if we wanted to store, say, 10 different values, we would have had to declare a val, say a1 equals 5, and then we make another one, a2 equals something, etc., etc. And so we'd have to declare multiple variables, one for each one of the values that we wanted to store. In a sense, we could have made a tuple that stored a number of values, but the problem with the tuple is how you access them. If I have a tuple that has, say, 5 elements in it, we'll do like that, and I wanted to run through each of them. Well, in order to get out the first element, I use the _1 method, and the next element is the _2 method. There's not a good way for me to just go through there, and if there had been 100 of them, I can't, for example, use recursion and write a simple recursive function to go through and just say print out all the values. In order to do that, we need a new construct, and that's what the array will be for us. So the simplest syntax for building an array is just to say array with a capital A, and then in parentheses give the values that we want to store. Like that. You can see that the type of this expression is an array of int. Okay, and so Scala uses square brackets to represent what are called type parameters, and so in the case of the array, this tells us what type the array is storing. Okay. Note that we didn't have to tell it was an array of int, it figured that out on its own. You can, if you wish, tell it a type, and so in this case, because all of those ints are also valid doubles, I could tell Scala I want this to actually be an array of doubles, and then it would make it into an array of doubles with those values as double values. So let's take this array here, the res2, except I'm going to give it a name, val arr equals res2. That way we can easily refer back to it as arr. And we want to look at how we can get values out of this, and as well as in the case of an array, we can also assign values, so we can store new things inside of it and overwrite what was there. So to get values out, we're going to use parentheses. It's just like calling a function, and what we pass in is the index of what we want. And arrays in Scala are 0 indexed, which means that the first element is at index 0, and the second element is at index 1, etc., up to the length or size of the array. And if you need to know that, there's a method called length. It turns out you can also call size, and those will both give you how many elements are stored in the array. So that allows you to access elements to get them out. Turns out that you can also store values in arrays. Arrays are mutable, and this is the first type that we've seen in Scala that's mutable. We'll explore the impact of this later on, but we can just demonstrate here that arr sub 2 is currently 9. Well, we can change it, say make it 99, and then if we look at the value, sure enough it's 99. If we look at arr as a whole, you see that the third element here is now 99. So we've mutated the contents of the array. We've made it so that it stores something different than what it had before. Now, while we can mutate the contents of the array, it turns out that we can't efficiently change its length. So once I create an array like this, it has 5 elements in it. Now, of course, in the REPL, it turns out that I can declare a new val that has the same name. But if you're working inside of a script, you won't be able to do that. And so once you make an array, it's going to have that size. Actually, the object itself will have that size forever. To make a larger array, we'd have to create a new one and copy all the values over. So it turns out it's an inefficient thing, and generally we're going to use arrays when we know up front how many things we're going to have inside of them. So that kind of hits the highlights of the arrays. We're going to come back and we'll look at writing some functions that deal with arrays and use recursion and the fact that we can index in using just integer values to do the things that we were saying we couldn't do with tuples, we couldn't do easily with having lots of variables. The array is going to give us that capability.